Hey guys, MGX for Fun here on the other side of the camera this time. So, I'm doing something a little bit different than what I normally do because I'm trying to do different things so I don't have to keep uploading the same things over and over again. So, I'm going to do my personal sealed review on Hour of Devastation. Now, Hour of Devastation looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to draft with a lot of really cool interactions and a new kind of land type called Desert. And so we're going to go through the top 5 cards for drafting. We're going to start with land. So for land, number 5. So there's this little cycle of deserts. I say cycle. It's kind of funny because you can cycle them. They're the Desert of the True, Desert of the Fervent, Desert of the Mindful, Desert of the Indomitable, and Desert of the Glorified. Those 5 cards, I couldn't decide between them because they're all equally good. Now, they come into play tapped, sure, but in a format like this, it's not that bad. Because they add color. So it's pretty much like putting a basic swamp or a basic island or a basic mountain. You get it. But if you draw it later and you don't need the land, you can cycle it. The reason I put these at number 5 is because not only are they a desert, and in the set there's a lot of cards that can interact with deserts, but you can cycle them later, which makes them basically just a really good land. And then number 4 is Hostile Desert. It's a rare this time around. You can tap, it's also a desert, obviously land desert. You can tap 2, exile a land card from your graveyard. It becomes a 3/4 elemental creature until end of turn. That's still a land. So I put this in number 4 because there's a lot of lands that there's a lot of lands. Well, there's a lot of lands. There's a lot of cards in this set that sacrifice deserts. So when you sacrifice the deserts and you don't have a way to get them back, you can use this to exile them and make it into a 3/4 creature that you can use to swing at your opponents. Now we'll move on to number 3, which is Dunes of the Dead. Dunes of the Dead is a land that taps for a colorless or a generic, whichever you prefer, and when it's put in the graveyard from the battlefield, you get a 2/2 black zombie. So you play this land, obviously not in a multicolored deck. If you have more than 2 colors, this card is not good. But if you're playing 1 or 2 colors, you can put this land in, and then somebody decides it'd be funny to blow up your lands. Blow this up, you get a creature out of it. Yeah, and it's a desert again. The deserts are going to be huge. Then we move on to number 2, which is Ifnir Deadland. Sorry, you can tap to add a colorless, or you can tap it, pay a life to add a color or a black to your mana pool. You can pay 2 and 2 black to sacrifice a desert. See again with the sacrifice. And you can put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature and opponent controls. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So it's a little slow being at sorcery speed, but it's removal on a land, and like I said before, with how many deserts that are in this set, it's going to be really useful. You're going to get probably 3 or 4 uses out of it, and it can sack itself to do it. If you need to get something out of the way, I put it at number 2. This is all my personal opinion on the set. And then the number 1 land is Scavenger Grounds. It's a rare from Hour of Devastation. It's a land desert. You tap it to add a colorless to your mana pool, and you can pay 2 and tap it to sacrifice a desert and exile all cards from all graveyards. In this set, there's a lot of mechanics like Eternalize. You exile it from your graveyard, and it comes back as a 4/4 zombie. And there's just a bunch of other cards that you can use to get things back from your graveyard, or exile other cards to get benefit from it. With this, it just shuts it all down. I personally think this is one of the best lands in the set, especially for sealed. Not just for sealed. I think it's going to see some play in other places because graveyard hate is a big thing. Now they won't have to necessarily put a spot for Grafdigger's Cage in their decks. They can put this in. If they, obviously they have to run more than one, but you get my point. So that is the top 5 cards for sealed in lands from Hour of Devastation. We're going to go over the multicolored cards, my top 5 that I think are going to be really helpful this weekend. Cards to be looking out for. Now, in the multicolor, there's not a lot of cards, so most of these are either rare or mythic. So you're not necessarily going to have as high a chance of getting them, but they're really good if you do. So the first one we're going to go over is the Scarab God. It's a 5/5 for 3, a blue and a black. Legendary God. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. You can pay 2, a blue and a black, to exile a target creature from a graveyard. A graveyard is the key word, or key phrase, I guess. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. When the Scarab God dies, return it to the owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So, if it dies, and they don't find a way to exile it, you're just going to get to play it again. This guy is really good, and he's also really good in Commander. I'm probably going to end up building him if I can get my hands on one. I'm hoping I can out of 2 boxes. That would be nice. Anyways, moving on to number 4, which is Bloodwater Entity. It's an uncommon from the set. It's a red, a blue, and a colorless for a 2/2 elemental with flying and prowess. And prowess, in case you don't know, is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And when Bloodwater Entity enters the battlefield, you may put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. Now, this set isn't got a ton of instants and sorceries in it, but the ones that it does have are huge. I mean, there's a card where you can get basic lands and then put zombies into play. There's Bontu's Glory, or whatever it's called, Bontu's Last something or other. It's a 3-drop, destroy all creatures, your lands don't untap. It's ridiculous. So, and this guy has prowess, so if you cast a couple spells in a turn, you're going to be hitting for 3 or 4 or 5, any of the above. So it's really, really good. If they can't get rid of it, it's going to get really frustrating for them. Now, number 3 is Samut the Tested. It's a 4-drop Planeswalker. It costs 2, a red, and a green. Planeswalker Samut. It comes into play with 4 loyalty counters. Her +1 is up to 1 target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Her -2 is Samut the Tested deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 target creatures and or players. And 7 is search your library for up to 2 creatures and or Planeswalker cards and put them into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Now, Planeswalkers are always really good in sealed because most of the time it's harder for people to deal with them because they don't just have the destroy a Planeswalker or bounce target permanent or anything like that. So when you get a Planeswalker, I'd say probably 60 or 70% of the time, it's going to stick around and go off. And if you can get Samut to go off, it's usually just game over. Especially if you have more than 1 Planeswalker in your deck, or you have a bunch of big creatures, which is really awesome. Moving on to number 2 is the Locust God. Now this guy is really, really good, not just in sealed, but in everything. I'm thinking about taking my blue-red deck and making it into a Locust God deck. So he's a 4/4 for 4 colorless, a blue, and a red, and he's a god. Flying. Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. So that alone is really good, especially when you can... So you automatically get an insect every turn when you draw, and then if you're playing blue, so you're going to have a lot of card draw anyway, and then you can pay 2, a blue and a red, to draw a card, then discard a card. So you basically can pay 4 to get a 1/1 with haste and flying, which... That ability is okay, but it's good. The flying and the haste makes it really nice. And then, just like the other gods, when the Locust God dies, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So they kill it, it's just going to come back. So in Commander, as long as they don't exile your graveyard before the end step, you're going to get it back to your hand. It's going to cost 6 over and over again, so it's going to be really good. And then number 1 is Nicobolus God Pharaoh. So he's in sealed. I think he's really good if you can pull the colors off. So it costs 4, a blue, a black, and a red. And he comes into play with 7 loyalty counters. Now, his +2 is target opponent exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So, that's really good, especially if you get somebody's, big creature or somebody else's Nicobolus. I just think he's really good. He's number 1 because he's my personal favorite card in this set. And he's one of the best cards in the set, honestly. His +1, each opponent exiles 2 cards from his or her hand. That's insane in its own. The +2 is not necessarily that great in sealed, but the +1 is ridiculous. They get rid of 2 cards in their hand. They're not discarded, they're just gone. And then -4, Nicobolus deals 7 damage to target opponent or creature an opponent controls. So, right when you play him, you can deal 7 damage to them immediately. In sealed, that is so good. If you can pull that color scheme off and you get this card, it's ridiculous. And then -12, exile each non-land permanent your opponents control. So it's a one-sided wipe that just obliterates everything that they have come to know and love. And it's going to make a few people salty, but it's going to be really funny for the person playing it. So those are the top 5 cards for sealed from Hour of Devastation in multicolor. We're doing the split cards. Now the split cards are really, really cool, I think. Some of them are not good, and some of them, half of them are good, and the other half is really terrible. But these are the top 5 that I personally think are going to be very helpful this weekend. So, the first one we have is Consign and Oblivion. So, Consign is a instant for 1 and a blue. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So, it's like Disperse. And then Oblivion, it has Aftermath. You can play this spell from your graveyard and then exile it. And its target opponent discards 2 cards. But it costs 5. A black and 4 colorless. Seems like a lot, but late game, if you don't have anything else to do, and they only have 2 cards in their hand, it pretty much stops them in their tracks. So now, number 4 is Farm and Market. Now, Farm is a 3-drop instant, a white and 2 colorless, and you destroy a target attacking or blocking creature. In sealed, being able to just outright destroy a creature that's attacking you is always really good. And then Market, Aftermath, you can cast it from your graveyard. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. For 3 mana, that's really not that bad. Especially in sealed. And like I said before, if you get a deck that has a lot of interaction with the graveyard, discarding cards might not be a bad thing. And then Appeal and Authority. So Appeal is really good on its own, not just in sealed, but it's a really, really cheap pump spell. It's a 1 green sorcery. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. So you play that with 3 creatures on the board. For 1 mana, it gets trample and +3/+3. And with some of the really, really big creatures in this set, that could be insane. And then Authority is a 2-drop sorcery. Tap up to 2 target creatures your opponent's control, and creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. So you tap down their creatures and give your creatures vigilance, so after you attack, they can block too on the backswing because you know that your opponents are going to want to get back at you. And then number 2 is Claim to Fame. This card is ridiculous. It's already it's pre-ordering for $2 or $3 already, and I think it's going to go up a little bit more. So what it is, Claim is a 1-drop sorcery, costs 1 black, return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's ridiculous. Fame, it's alright. The reason it's so much is because of Claim, but Fame is a 2-drop sorcery, a red and a colorless. A target creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. So you get the creature back and then you swing with it in the same turn for 3 mana, and it gives +2/+0. That's not bad at all. But Claim is really good because it's going to be used in Modern and other formats with some of the ridiculously crazy creatures. And number one, I think my personal favorite split card in this set is Reason to Believe. So it's a 1-drop, or Reason is 1-drop sorcery. It costs 1 blue, and it just says Scry 3. So you get to filter the top 3 cards of your library, and yeah, if you don't like them, you put them on the bottom. And then Believe has Aftermath, and then you look at the top card of your library, you may put it into the battlefield if it's a creature card. If you don't, put it into your hand. So you pay 5, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature, you get to put it directly into play. If it's not, you still get to draw a card. It's really, really good, and it's going to be really solid, especially with some of the stuff like the Sifter Worm. Sifter Worm is insane. We'll get to that card later. And now we're going to go over the top 5 artifacts from Hour of Devastation that I personally believe deserve to be in the top 5 for sealed, because the pre-release is this weekend, and I hope everybody's excited, because I definitely am. So we're going to start off with number 5, which is Hollow One. It's a 4/4 for 5 Golem. He costs 2 less for each card you've cycled or discarded this turn, and he has cycling himself. So I put this one at number 5 mostly because it's good in itself. If you can cycle 1 or 2 cards, he costs that much less. I mean, it ends up costing the same anyway, but in the long run, it seems really good. And if somebody makes you discard your hand, which there is cards that make you discard in this set, then he costs less. And he can cycle himself, so if you can't cast him, you can just draw a card off of him. And if you happen to be incredibly lucky and get more than one, then they work off of each other, which is nice. Now, the the number 4 is Abandoned Sarcophagus. This goes a lot with the Hollow One that I just talked about, but you may cast, it's a 3-drop artifact, that you may cast non-land cards with cycling from your graveyard. And if a card with cycling will be put into the graveyard from anywhere, and it wasn't cycled, you exile it. So basically, you can just cast the cards in your graveyard after you cycle them. So you can cycle them to draw a card now, and then later when you have the mana, you can use that to play the spell. There's a lot of cycling cards in this set, and it's really, really powerful. So now number 3 is Crook of Condemnation, or Condemnation. Condemnation? I don't know. Anyways, it's a 2-drop artifact where you pay 1, tap it, exile target card from a graveyard, or you can pay 1, exile the Crook, and exile all cards from all graveyards. So again, it's another one of those cards that's really good for graveyard hate, and like I've said before, there's a lot of cards in the set that interact with the graveyard, so if you get rid of it, what are they going to do? Especially if that's their main concept of the deck they build, they're screwed. Number 2 is Mirage Mirror. It's a 3-drop artifact. You pay 2, it becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. That's crazy. That card's going to be so good in so many different formats. Basically, it allows you to have 8 of something in your deck if you decide to play 4 of them, which, depending on the deck, could be bad or good. But the fact that it can copy anything, a creature, artifact, enchantment, land, copy everything except a planeswalker, instant, or sorcery, is really good. So, say, it's a good example. Say you're playing a deck and it has a mana rock in it, and you need a little bit more mana, and the mana rock taps for, say, 3 or 4. You can pay 2, copy it, and now you have an extra 2 mana, or an extra 1 mana. You can also make it a copy of a really, really big creature on the field, like an Eldrazi or something like that, and swing. There's also a lot of just big, beefy creatures in this set, and there's a lot of creatures that offer a lot of disruption that this card would be really good to play with. And number 1 for artifacts is Sunset Pyramid. So this card is really good in itself. It's only an uncommon. It's a 2-drop artifact, and it enters the battlefield with 3 brick counters on it. So you can pay 2, tap it, remove a brick counter from it, and draw a card. Or you can pay 2 and tap it to scry 1. So even when you've removed all of the brick counters from it, you still get a huge benefit by being able to scry the lands from the top of your deck to the bottom when you don't want to draw them late game. It's just a really, really good filter engine. If you get this, I highly recommend that you use it. So that was the artifacts from Hour of Devastation. And these are my top 5 black cards from Hour of Devastation to be watching out for when you're drafting, well, not drafting, when you're building a sealed deck this weekend. So number 5 is Dream Stealer. It's a 1/2 for 3 that has Menace, which menaces it can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Whenever Dream Stealer deals combat damage to a player, that player discards that many cards. So it's basically a 1/2 for 3 that whenever it deals damage, they discard a card. And if you can make it a 2/2, they'll discard 2 cards. Excuse me, so on and so forth. So it just gets really annoying. And then it has Eternalize, which from the white top 5 white cards, there was a card with Eternalize in that. You exile it from your graveyard, and it becomes a copy of that creature, but it's a 4/4 black zombie. So when you Eternalize it, it costs 2 black and 4 colorless to Eternalize it. They'll be discarding 4 cards when you hit somebody with it. Blah, 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 blah. Number 4 is Torment of Scarabs. So it's a 4-drop enchantment. It's an enchant player, an aura curse. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So they're either going to be discarding a card, which is going to be disrupting their hand, or they're going to be sacrificing a permanent, which is going to be disrupting the game and their board state, which is really nice for you and not nice for them. And then number 3 is Hour of Glory. Exile target creature. If that creature was a god, its controller reveals his or her hand and exiles all cards from it with the same name as that creature. So it's 4 mana for an instant, but it just gets rid of a creature. It doesn't destroy it. It exiles it. It's gone. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, there's nothing in the set that lets you bring back exiled cards. There's not very many cards in Magic that let you bring back exiled cards. So this card is just really good. It costs 4, which is a little bit, but in sealed is ridiculous. Now we move on to number 2. Now, number 2 is an interesting one. It's just like, it reminds me of Grizzlebrand because he's going to be banned so fast in Commander, it's not even funny. But it's a heavy mana cost. It costs 5 colorless and 3 black. But it's an 8/8 demon. It's Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. He's a legendary demon, 8/8 for 8, with flying and trample. Now you can pay 2 life and sacrifice another creature and search your library for a card and put that card into your hand and shuffle your library. If he does not get banned in Commander, I don't know what Wizards of the Coast is thinking, but that is ridiculous. You pay 2 life and sack a creature, which you're going to have creatures, and you can get any card from your deck, anything. And you can do it at instant speed. That is ridiculous. And he's going to join Big Daddy Grizzlebrand on the banned list of Commander. I know it. Number 1 is Torment of Hailfire. Now, this card is crazy. It's a black and X. And you repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So you pay 5, it would be 2, and X would be 3. So they would either lose 9 life, or sacrifice 3 non-land permanents, or discard 3 cards, or any combination of the 3. It's crazy, especially in sealed. You draw that late game, you have like 7 mana, they're going to do it 5 times. It's just ridiculous value. And it's going to really cripple whoever you're playing against. We're going over the top 5 sealed cards for blue. So, number 5 is Eternal of Harsh Truths. It's a 1/3 for 3, a blue and 2 colorless, a zombie cleric with Afflict. Now, Afflict is a new mechanic, and it's whenever this creature becomes blocked, its opponent loses that much life. So if it has afflict 5, the opponent will lose 5 life if it's blocked. This one has afflict 2, so if it's blocked, they lose 2 life automatically. So if you hit them, you're dealing 1 damage. If they block, you're dealing 2 damage. It's really good. And then whenever it attacks and isn't blocked, you get to draw a card. So if they do block, they lose an extra life. If they don't block, you get to draw a card, and they still lose a life. So that's why it's number 5. Number 4 is Unsummon. Unsummon's been printed a million times in a bunch of different sets, all the way back to Alpha and Beta, I'm pretty sure. It's just a solid card. It's a 1-drop instant that returns a creature from battlefield to hand. You just spot removal something that's attacking you, and that's it. I apologize if you can hear the train, and worst time to go through. Anyways, number 3 is Countervailing Winds. So with blue, you're going to want to be in control. And people that play blue are... well, I'm not going to say it. But it's a 3-drop instant. It's a blue and 2 colorless. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 1 mana for each card in your graveyard. And it has cycling. So you can counter a spell and you have 5 cards in your graveyard. They have to pay 5. And I guarantee you probably 50% of the time, no, more than that, probably like 80% of the time, if you have more than 4 cards in your graveyard, they're not going to be able to pay for it. Because a lot of the spells in this are big. Unless they're playing like a 1-drop. I don't know why you would counter that anyway. You would save it for something much bigger. Number 2, this card is insane. And I don't know why they keep printing cards like this. I mean, Aetherworks Marvel got banned. The Thoptercopter got banned. And I feel like this will get banned. I don't know for sure, but it's really, really solid. So, not only is it a 3/1 for 3 with flying and flash, but it has cycling for a blue and 2 colorless. And whenever you cycle it, counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control. So, let's say somebody activates the ability on the legendary demon, sack another creature and pay 2 life. They would still lose the 2 life, but they wouldn't get the trigger on the ability. It's just crazy, and they wonder why. It's a bird wizard too. Birds, man. Tribal birds deck. That'll be coming out soon. And number 1, and I think this is one of the best cards in the set, honestly. As far as, well, best non-rare or mythic in the set. It's Supreme Will. So it's a 3-drop instant, and you choose one. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 3, or you can look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So you basically scry 4 and draw a card. Or you counter a spell unless they pay 3. That's crazy. People are going to go nuts with this card. I'm hoping that there's not anybody that gets like 2 of this card, because that'll be ridiculous, and they'll probably go pretty far, unless the rest of their pool sucks. Top 5 white cards to be looking out for this weekend from Hour of Devastation. So number 5 is a 3-drop instant. It costs a white and 2 colorless. It's called Sandblast. So Sandblast deals 5 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. It's not as good as Destroy target attacking or blocking creature, but with 5 damage, you can kill probably 80% of the creatures in this set. So it's really good, and it's instant speed, which is really nice. Number 4 is Jeru's Runication, I think is how you say that. Anyways, it's an instant for a white and a colorless, and you can tap up to 2 target creatures, and it has cycling for a single white. So people move to declare attack step, you play that, you tap 2 of their creatures down, and you take a lot less damage, or you don't take any, depending on how many creatures they have. Okay, and then number 3 is Oktra's Last Mercy. It's a 3-drop sorcery, 2 white and a colorless, and your life total becomes equal to your starting life total, and lands on untap during your next untap step. So it's one of those one of those last cards from the gods from the last set. And this one is really, really good because somebody has you down to 5, puts you back up to 20. And you don't get to untap for 1 turn, but big deal. That's not a huge deal at all, especially since it only costs 3. It's crazy. It's not only good in sealed, but it's going to be good everywhere. If you have a white deck, anyway. And then number 2 is Angel of Condemnation. It's a 3/3 for 4, 2 white and 2 colorless, with flying and vigilance. That in itself is really good. And then it has a white and 2 colorless, and tap it, exile another target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it's pretty much like, what is the card? Eldrazi Displacer. Except it doesn't cost a colorless and 2, or it doesn't cost a generic and 2 colorless, it costs a white and 2 colorless. And then you can pay a white and 2 colorless and exert it, exile a target creature until Angel of Condemnation leaves the battlefield. So you exert it, and it just exiles the creature right out. So the first ability we would use on your own creatures, and the second ability you'd use on theirs. And number 1 is a Doran Pouncer. Now, when I first saw this card, I didn't like it. But that's because I didn't read what Eternalize did. So it's a 1/1 for 2, a white and a colorless, with double strike. So it's basically a 2/2 for 2. And then you can pay 5, 3 colorless, and 2 white, and use Eternalize, which exiles it from your graveyard, and it becomes a copy of the creature, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. And you can Eternalize only as a sorcery. So for 5 mana, you get a 4/4 double strike. Or for 2 mana, you get a 1/1 double strike. That is insane, and that is easily one of the most powerful white cards in Sealed. It's going to be just a good card all around anyway, especially since Commander 2017 spoiled the cat deck, and this is a cat. 5 green cards for Sealed, and this is based off of what I think. This is, not everybody's going to agree with me. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people that don't agree with me, but this is my top 5 cards. So number 5 is Ramen App Excavator. Now this card is going to be pretty good in Sealed, but this card is going to be ridiculous everywhere else, and I think it's going to go way up because it's just a Crucible of Worlds on a creature, which is insane. It's a 2/3 for 3 that you can play lands from... Oh, excuse me. You may play land cards from your graveyard, just like Crucible of Worlds. Crucible of Worlds costs 3 too, but this is a creature, so you can beat people over the head with it. It's like using Karn to make Crucible of Worlds a creature and slapping somebody upside the head with it. Number 4 is Sifter Worm. I talked about this in one of the earlier videos, and Sifter Worm is a 7/7 for 7 with Trample. And when it enters the battlefield, you scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library, and you gain life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So, not only are you getting a 7/7 for 7 with Trample, but you get to look at the top 3 cards of your library, and you can put them on the bottom if you want to. You can put all 3 of them on the bottom, and then reveal the top card, and you gain life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So, say you get 2 Sifter Worms. You play the first Sifter Worm, and you scry 3, and reveal the top card, and it's another Sifter Worm. You gain 7 life, and you get a 7/7 for 7 with Trample. This card is crazy good. Number 3 is Tenacious Hunter. Now, Tenacious Hunter, I put it number 3 because he's a 4/4 for 4, and as long as a creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, he has Vigilance and Death Touch. So, this is one of these cards that can be really, really good or really, really bad, but I put it at number 3 because it's like the mid-range. If you're playing a deck that has a bunch of negative counters that you're going to be putting on creatures anyway, he's a 4/4 for 4 with Vigilance and Death Touch. That is crazy good, and he's a crocodile. He's a weird-looking crocodile. He looks more like a Komodo dragon, but what are you going to do? Wizards of the Coast, what are you doing? You're home, go drunk. Number 2 is Ramen App Hydra. Just like the card number 5, the Ramen App Excavator. This is the Ramen App Hydra. It's a 3/3 for 4 Snake Hydra with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. And remember from the land video when we talked a lot about how many deserts there are in this set and all the cards that interact with deserts? Well, this is one of them. Ramen App Hydra gets +1/+1 as long as you control a desert, and he gets another +1/+1 if you have a desert in your graveyard. So you have one in play and you have one in your graveyard. He's a 5/5 for 4 with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. He is crazy good, and in Sealed especially, he's a bomb. And last but not least, number 1, again, Tribal Cats, man. It's Pride Sovereign. So it's a 2/2 for 3, and Pride Sovereign gets +1/+1 for each other cat you control. And you can pay a white and tap him to exert him, and you get a 1/1, you put 2 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink into the battlefield. That's really good. So you pay 1, and you get 2 1/1 white cat creatures with vigilance. Or with lifelink. I don't know why I said vigilance. But you have to exert him. Oh no. He doesn't untap for 1 turn, but you have 2 creatures to swing with that have lifelink. Yeah, so that is my top 5 green cards for Hour of Devastation. My top 5 red cards for Sealed that you should be watching out for. So, number 5 is Earthshaker Kenra. It's a 2/1 for 2 Jackal Warrior with haste. So it's a 2/1 for 2 with haste automatically. And then when he enters the battlefield, target creature with power less than or equal to Kenra's power can't block this turn. So say you have a couple big creatures out and they just have a bunch of like 1/1s or a bunch of 2/2s or something like that, and you play him, they can't block at all and they just take all the damage to their face. And then he has Eternalize, which makes him a 4/4, so it does the same thing except creatures with power 4 or less can't block. This card is really, really good if you're playing a creature-based deck, at least. Number 4 is Chaos Maw. Now, it's an expensive card. It's 7 mana. It's 2 red and 5 colorless, and it's a Hellion. When Chaos Maw enters the battlefield, it does 3 damage to each other creature, and it's a 6/6. 7 mana is a lot, but late game, most of the creatures in this set are small. So if you play that, it pretty much almost guarantees to wipe their board completely, and you have a 6/6 beater that you can punch them right in the nose with. That's why this card is so good. Number 3 is Open Fire. Now, it's not Lightning Bolt good, but it does the same thing, but it costs 3. It's a red and 2 colorless for an instant. It deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So, they're not ever going to print something like Lightning Bolt again that just straight out deals 3 damage without meeting any other kind of condition. We've gotten close with a card from Scars of Mirrodin that escapes my mind right now, but this is still going to be really good because it's 3 mana to deal 3 damage to creature or player with no drawbacks. We move on to number 2, which is Hazoret's Undying Fury. It's a 6-drop red sorcery. It's a lot of mana, but you shuffle your library, then you exile the top 4 cards. You may cast any number of non-land cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them without paying their mana costs, and lands you control don't untap during your next turn. So you shuffle your library and reveal the top 4 cards. You can cast... If you get all cards that cost less than 5, you can cast all of them. Or, no, sorry, cost less than 6. You can cast all of them. So you basically get to play 4 spells for 6. This card's really good, and it's going to be another bomb in Sealed, especially. It's going to be really good in Commander, too. And number 1, one of my favorite cards in the set, I think, is Wildfire Eternal. So it's a 1/4 for 4. It's a zombie jackal cleric. It's a mouthful. And it has Afflict 4, which we talked about Afflict before, but in case you didn't see it, whenever the creature becomes blocked, it deals X damage, where X is the amount of Afflict it has. So if it has Afflict 4, like this creature does, when it's blocked, it deals 4 damage to that creature, to that player. Well, they lose 4 life, sorry. Lost life and damage are a little different. So they lose 4 life when it gets blocked. And then, whenever Wildfire Eternal attacks and isn't blocked, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. That card is ridiculous. It's really, really good in sealed. It's going to be really good in so many other formats. You can cast a time stretch from your hand if they don't block it. And a lot of the time, they're not going to want to block it, because if they block it, they're going to lose 4 life. So that is the last and final video on Hour of Devastation sealed. I hope you guys have a lot of fun this weekend. I'm unsure if I'm going to attend one or not. It just depends on what life throws, I guess. Thank you so much for watching. I'll put a link to the playlist in the description of each of these videos, and this is going to be a playlist of Hour of Devastation sealed. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe, like the video. It helps me out a lot. Bye, guys.